Alright, welcome back to my Sorare journey. A slightly different one today because things have not gone well this week. In fact, I'd probably call it my worst week on Sorare. So I'm just going to talk through absolutely everything that's happened, how I'm going to try and make things better and just, assess the whole situation honestly. Like I said, this journey is about my whole journey. You have your ups, you have your downs, and currently I'd call this a down. We're going to try and make it as positive as possible. It's going to be very similar to the last episode where, it's a lot longer form, a lot you seem to like that. So just stick with me and see where it goes. So what has gone wrong? Well, looking on screen here, you can see some of the teams and pretty much all of them are bust except for one, which looks like a pick up reward. But if you are putting up 12 teams, getting one to get a reward probably isn't great. But that's not really the point. You go through stages on Sorare where you win all the time or you lose all the time. Winning 1 and 12 isn't the end of the world. It's definitely not the worst week. So I'll get to what is the worst point. But before that, I'll just run for every team and explain. Benzema, ruined 2 teams last week. He's going to ruin 1 team this week because, again, he's not expected to play. Like, this time, I'm more annoyed about it because I wasn't chancing anything. Obviously, he played in the Champions League against Celtic. He played like 30 minutes or so. So it's like, all right, he's guaranteed to be fit. And he's pulled up with an injury in training or something. But let's be real, there's no injury, is there? It's all these guys going to the World Cup. Their eyes are sorely focused on the World Cup. They don't want to do anything to miss it. So if there's any doubts, yeah. That's where I see it, at least. Maybe I'm wrong. The next team was like the ETH grinding thresholds. That's fine. Tom Rogic, didn't really expect him to play, but then Azuni hitting a 21 being benched, not good enough. And here's where the real problems start. This is where it really went downhill. So All-Star Rare Pro, Nadal, the goalkeeper of Real Oviedo, has been dropped out of absolutely nowhere. Like, no one expected this to come from anywhere. Reading reports, it's like the biggest surprise ever. On top of that, they're playing Granada, one of the best teams in the league. The new keeper comes in and keeps a clean sheet with 10 men. So it's fairly certain to say he is not going to be sticking around as the #1 keeper. If your sub comes in and just does a better performance than you, who are you going to play in the next game? It's that simple. And he was on the bench. He wasn't injured, which is, I'd prefer he had an illness and he's back next week. And then you partner that with Daily Blend. Daily Blend is one of the biggest games for PSV. One of the biggest games for Ajax. They're playing PSV. Obviously, it's like a top of the table clash. I expect him to start pretty much. He's been pretty bang out of form since I got him. Fantastic. I'll show you exactly how much he's gone down in value because this is a painful one. I got him for £1,900 and his last sale of an auction of a new card was £870. So about £1,000 down on that, which is pretty bad, but it's one of those things where the quality of Daily Blend. So it's like, I'm just going to stick with him and he'll get better. He's played games against Napoli, Liverpool, not expecting much. And even in the games in the league, they underperformed as a team, no fault of his own. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, well, yes, he moved to centre-back, which should change his scores a little bit, but he's still going to be like a timber sort and who still puts up massive scores, Until today, where in a crucial game, he's just not playing. And it's just left me this like really sour taste of like, he's old, if he's not first choice or he becomes rotational, maybe his price goes down even further. And I've gone from being like, I would buy a super rare Daily Blend, I'd buy another Daily Blend, he's dropped so far in price, to like just this game today, me being like, I don't think I want one at all. So that's just tricky. On top of that, you have Jonathan Vieira, he came off the bench. Nothing wrong with coming off the bench, right? They've had 3 games in a row. It's like completely normal. But the problem is I've just had my goalkeeper and my defender into massive, massive doubt. Vieira is one of the best players on the game, about £2,500, £2,300. I got the #1 version. I have the best XP possible on him and I can't use him. Well, I can use him, but I can't use him to win the rewards, if that makes sense, unless I go out and buy a goalkeeper and a defender that are of similar standards, which, Daily Blind cost me £2,000 at the time, now £1,000, and Nadal cost me £850. So it's like, this might sound wild, I'm debating selling my whole rare team. Like, that's how bad this game week is now because of those 2 absolutely crucial positions. Yes, I'll have a defender that can replace him, but no one to the similar standard of Daily Blind, and I actually don't have another rare goalkeeper. I didn't buy the backup because there wasn't many. I normally do if it's an expensive purchase, but because Nadal was slightly cheaper in £850, like, yes, very expensive, but for a rare goalkeeper, he's on the lower end. I was like, it'll probably be okay. this second goalkeeper coming had never played a game, I'm pretty sure, at least not one that I'd seen. So yeah, that's not good. And then the other guy's just putting up bad scores on a week. Doesn't really matter. Casual league we're not going to talk about. Challenger Europe is just Celtic teams all over the place. It's so rotational, and then you mix in the fact that we just haven't been keeping clean sheets. Many reasons for that. If any of you watched the game at the weekend, VAR was an absolute disgrace again. I absolutely hate it, just in terms of football in general, not just because it slightly dampened Celtic's results recently. Nothing to do with that. Like, I think it ruins football, not being able to celebrate. Side tangent, we'll get past that. Who are we mixing the Celtic players with? I had Benfica, Sachs, and all the rest of it, but honestly, if I didn't support Celtic, that whole team would be gone. It's actually annoying having a challenger team, especially when you get like Zenit just running over people most weeks, or if it's not Zenit, it's Ajax. So not a team I'm particularly excited about, but I struggle to sell them because my favourite players, and they're down in value loads. So that's how that's gone. Messi. This was obviously like my team of the week. It doesn't really matter. Kimmich and Trent didn't play well, but it takes your enjoyment right out of the weekend as soon as you know that your favourite team is dead before it even starts because Messi had a knock. Again, one of these random knocks that come out of nowhere. Like, Messi's joining the Argentina team next week because he doesn't want to play for PSG. And I don't think he got this week off. And he was like, I'm not going to risk my fitness for the World Cup against Lorient. It's just a pain. Like, I debated not playing him because I thought he wanted to play for Argentina, but I didn't expect him to come out with this, knock. He could actually have an injury, to be fair. This is all speculation, but it makes a lot of sense for speculation if you know what I'm saying. Legends Challenge, it's just a nothing team, really. Franz Beckenbauer says he didn't play. There was 4 defenders playing for Bayern, so that's a little mistake. Doesn't really matter. Aaron Moy. As a specialist, I thought this was great. I've got Bono, that's a goalkeeper, and Moy, that was, like, in my eyes, guaranteed to play for Celtic because McGregor's out, and it's like, okay, he wasn't guaranteed to play, but I put him at like 75%, like very, very likely. And it's just not worked at all. And then the other players are doing quite well, like Jesper Karlsson puts up nice scores. And I've got to say, like, I'm really, really bullish on Jesper Karlsson. I think he's fantastic. I've had him for a week now, and his price is almost halved after putting up really nice scores. And this obviously comes to how, like, limited cards have been performing at the moment in terms of value. And maybe that needs its whole own section because definitely they've been going down. Definitely a lot of football cards have been going down. I'm not too concerned, but it might need a full video to explain it. If I've got time at the end, I'll have my little thoughts on why limited cards or why Sorare football cards are down so bad and whether we should be panicking or essentially why maybe we shouldn't be panicking. But it's very much wait and see. When the Champion Europe lineup was dead, I was devastated, but I was like, I've absolutely got a monster U23 team, so don't worry about it. Jota started well, and then essentially it's just Guindo. Like, he's an absolute monster. I mean, I've got his 1 of 1,000 rookie card. His scores, he's like averaging huge scores, and he's just put up 24. Looks like he's fell out of form. He had a good fixture. I have no idea what's going on, but that's the only team that might pick up a reward. Currently on for a tier 2. We are 2 points away from dropping out of that to a tier 3, which is essentially worthless at this point in Sorare, in the limited division at least. So yeah, it's you can probably feel the pain in my voice now. It's been a long weekend because these guys just, not up to much. Like, obviously not bad for an underdog league. Annoyingly, Hakimi is obviously under 23, should have probably played him with Donnarumma, but I was just like, it's gone so wrong for me so many times, especially with Hakimi when he slotted into right back in a back 4. In a back 3, he's like a right winger, which is fantastic. In a 4-back for PSG, his scores are awful. Thankfully, they are back to a 3-back, and, I didn't expect that for this game. So going forward, looks like we'll stick with Hakimi until Koundé's back for Barcelona. But yeah, just another team down. Underdog. It was just one I had that really creeping feeling about that it was going to be fantastic. Celtic put 4 goals away. Rio Hatate's playing essentially a centre attacker mid-role for Celtic, and he's still not got a decisive. In fact, I thought his score would be a lot higher watching the game. It was one of those where I wasn't really paying too much attention to the Sorare scores. I was just looking at what's going on. I was like, yeah, this guy's having a really good game. His problem, if you own him or if you want to know a little bit more about him, he's too ambitious with the ball. Essentially, he'll make loads of easy passes and then he'll just go for like a wonder pass, and most of the time it doesn't go well and it costs him so many points from like a possession lost, missed pass, all the rest of it. So it's like, he's a fantastic player, but it's just not correlating to Sorare, and I completely understand it. But I can't sell him. He's just too good and, you know, too cheap to get any value out of him. Underdog rare, somewhere I've got to hold my hands up for, really. It was a nice team. I didn't really expect it to do much because I didn't expect Kyogo to start. He didn't start. Good knowledge from me. Came off the bench, got something, whatever. But it's this guy. I won him as a reward. He's about 20, 25 pounds. He's obviously not very good, but I captained him because I didn't check which team he played for in the Bundesliga. I thought he played for top of the league. He plays for middle of the league, and he's playing a team that were like 3-4 places higher. So to concede 4 goals was not expected, but it's also not the most ambitious thing ever. So now you feel my pain, now you understand what's gone on, we can try and drill down into what we can do. Because like I said, the biggest problem out of all of this is I've had a rare goalkeeper, my only rare goalkeeper dropped in the form of Tomu Nadal of Real Oviedo. And on top of that, his, you know, not partner in crime essentially, but who would play next to him in All-Star Rare Pro when possible, is a doubt. He's a 50-50. Now I still think Blind is a good price, but you can't have an absolute killer in Jonathan Vieira wasted in your SO5 teams with players that might not play. And this could be something you're doing wrong at home, which I see lots of people doing. It's like they have this absolute killer and they put them with like doubts all the time. And it's like, if you imagine, and I will mention this every single video, a slow line down, imagine every single card is slowly trickling down in value, right? You're trying to extract as much value as you can from your players. If you put, it's going to sound so stupid, like if you put your best players together, that's going to do very well, right? And what people often do is they get one really good player and one or 4 awful players that they mix together, and they're like, oh, because, you know, this player's really good, he can cover the rest of them. But what he ends up actually doing is wasting this really good player's scores, and what he should have done is bring the whole average of the team up, so you get 5 average players that play average all together all the time, and the occasion one of them pops off and he's your captain, you'll get some points. So that's, you know, the problem. How are we going to solve it? We need to get rid of them. I genuinely think I'm just going to have to get rid of most of my rare cards, so I guess we'll just do it together now. Now, I am recording this much later after trying to, obviously, as soon as I saw the news about Nadal, I tried to get him out of the club as quickly as possible so his value doesn't drop. I sent what I think is a really fair trade to Pavel Trader. Daley Blind, Tommy Newdow, David Neres, Rafa, Azudi, Florian Wirtz, Courtois, and Jorge de Frutas for rare words, and he wasn't having it. He wanted a ridiculous amount of money on top, so I just like ignored that. Let me know if you would accept this trade, because the only doubt is Tommy and Nadal. Everyone else would have sold for their average prices pretty easily, and I was given like at least, it was probably close, very close to half an ETH just for this trade, just because I was so like, you know, if I can't use these players, there's no point in them being in my gallery, really. And to be quite frank, I was like overreacting as well, just with anger, just with passion. Like, I just don't want to look at them, you know. Yeah. So the first port of call would obviously be going to sell your players. I think this is what everyone would do. They'd, you know, cut, undercut, cut, whatever. It just doesn't work, right? Someone like Nadal that's just lost his place potentially as a starting goalkeeper for Real Oviedo, no one is interested in buying him. I see this all the time. As soon as someone's injured, they list him, they undercut him, they just keep undercutting. It's like, you're just wasting your own value. No one is going to want that player. They like, you know, imagine everyone's aware to the circumstances, because as soon as you get an offer for a player, you don't just click accept, you read into them. You know, you do minimum due diligence on what the player's doing. So yes, I've listed him, but I've listed him above the last sale price, right? And I just did that because I had no other options, essentially. Lucas Ahiedo, he's from Real Oviedo, so he scored really well today. So I'm thinking someone might be looking for a player that's put a massive score up that's cheap. I've put him well over the price. I don't really want to sell him because I got him for like £60 and now he's worth like 150 and probably will have more positive scores going forward, but I'd also be happy to sell him if anyone came in. Callahan and Azuni, it's just like, if I'm going to sell my La Liga 2 goalkeeper, I might as well sell the attackers as well, because what I'm going to do with them, if I'm selling the attackers, I have to sell the big man, Jonathan Vieira. I did debate keeping him and putting him in other teams, but, you know, just because he's a good scorer doesn't mean he's going to slot into every team perfectly. He can actually hamper your teams. And this is another thing at home to learn, right? If you have a team and you've got a player you like, you need a strategy and a player you like, if that makes sense. So, you know, I see far too many people jamming players into strategies which don't fit the player. So, for example, my up-and-coming strategy, which if I got Wirtz, I would have fulfilled, is a rare Champion Europe team. Why a rare Champion Europe team? Because you've got to have a reason for it. Well, the Rare Champion Europe is because the Premier League is expected to be online. When the Premier League comes into Sorare, the rewards go up, the pool of it like improves in quality, improves in like value. So I could be earning or, you know, competing for better prizes essentially. So that's what I would have done. And yes, you can earn some of those in All-Star, but you're playing against so many more players. So this is why like essentially Jonathan Vieira needs sold. But when I was telling about how bad my weekend's been, because Vieira's on the bench, you know, no one's looking at him because he's just put up a 30. And if you don't know about him, it's very, you know, suspicious really. You know, this player that's been hitting massive scores that no one's ever heard of, he's put up a 30. Is this going to continue? Obviously, I know Vieira. I know how much he's worth. I know how good he is for Las Palmas. This only happened because he came off the bench. I don't know why no one wants my David Neres. I've put him at such a good price, I feel like, for weeks now, and just no one's buying. And on top of that, he's also on the bench this week. So, yeah, it's getting painful. So now we need to work on actually fixing the problem, right? We're trying to sell them, but realistically, no one's going to go out and buy them. We want to get rid of our team for the All-Star Rare Pro because without a goalkeeper, I don't want to go out and buy another one. And on top of that, we need an expensive defender, right? So how can we solve that? There are other people like Pavel that make their kind of trading profit off taking a percentage on top of your players. So essentially you can give them 8 cards, as long as they're worth 10, 15, 20% more, they can just sell them off in time, a lot more patient. It's a good strategy, but a lot of these people are very difficult to deal with because they require exuberant amounts of money, which is completely up to them. I've never worked with any of these people. You know, I've always done good deals with Pavel, but today it just didn't work. Very, very annoyingly. You know, I'm not going to rant about it, you know, he can do whatever he wants essentially. But we've got Superius Mane, Roddy Boss, and Kadzote. So what I'm looking for is my plan. If I am to move, I'm going to be moving to Champion Europe players in Rare. Now the problem is Champion Europe with World Cup utility and selling to World Cup hype, or Champion Europe no World Cup utility, because they'll be undervalued compared to the people that do have them. And honestly, I'm completely stuck because I haven't seen this massive run-up in Champion Europe players or World Cup players that I would expect to see. But then maybe that's because people just aren't selling their players, and once they've actually got the World Cup utility done, they'll sell off. The reason I think that is, like, if you think of like a Diogo Costa, right? When it was announced you don't really need him for the World Cup anymore, his price went down like 30%. So when you think of someone that's got World Cup utility, but isn't necessarily the best scorer, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, maybe like a Carvajal from Spain. Yeah, I'm not sure. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through the galleries and just see if there's any players that really stand out. Like Florian Wirtz stood out in Pavel's gallery because he's coming back from an injury. He's Champion Europe. He's under 23. Even if the worst thing happened and he, you know, broke his other ACL or had a reoccurring injury, he's young enough where he can come back to it. So we're looking for like a guaranteed. We're putting a lot of value into this player, or maybe essentially we get a goalkeeper and a defender and go for like a little combo strategy, you know. So we'll see who is available. Sorry, you know, someone like Sadio Mane, De Ligt, maybe not Martinez, Sule. You know, it could be a super rare as well because I think super rares are going to be less. They're going to come down in value less just because there's less supply of them coming onto the market in like a short time period. This is, you know, if I'm looking to hold on to a player that will hold value, I think someone that isn't going to have supply in say like a 3-week period actually would be the better option. And then alternatively, you know, I might just build a full team around this player, you know, if I really think he's good. Like someone like Lewandowski would be perfect, right? Where, Vlahovic, I'm just looking at that because I'm thinking underperforming, not going to the World Cup. Oh no, Serbia are going to go to the World Cup. So out of these players, so who's this? Roddy Boss. I've told he's quite good to deal with, which is nice. And he's got a good selection of players. So what I need to do is compare these players with World Cup utilities, those without. I think Casemiro is probably the perfect option of, for me, someone that's people will be buying into because he's going to the World Cup and he's in the best team, but probably isn't that great SO5 long term. I know he's on a hot run of form, right? Like some of these scores are great. Ignore the Villa game today and you're looking at a great player. And then you bring in the Villa game and you're like, yeah, that's kind of how he averages. He's more of a 52 average than a 65 without doubt for me. So yeah, essentially I'm just going to go through these players, see if anyone stands out. So I had to change positions because I've run out of battery on my camera and also my laptop. You don't care, right? You want to know about the deals. We're deep in the negotiations now. I found someone I want. Unai Simon from Bilbao. Yeah, from Atletico Bilbao. He also should be the #1 keeper for Spain. Yes, De Gea's got a chance of getting in, but the manager showed time and time again that he likes Simon more. But beyond that, he's a good goalkeeper in general. Underperforming a little bit. Reasonable price, slightly higher than I'd want, but Champion Europe keepers, they're only going to go up from here, right? And the initial negotiations didn't go well. This guy does exactly the same things as Pavel. Takes on 20% of players, 20% average. I asked him, how much do you want? He was like, 20% on Sorare data. Fine, found a builder. Did a straight build on Sorare data. It was actually 21%. And the guy was like, no, I only want good players. And I was like, well, why not say that at the start kind of thing? If you only want good players, I'm not going to give you 20% because I could sell the good players. Obviously, part of the point of getting 20% is I give you some bad players. Whatever. I'm like, we get to a better stage in negotiations. I put together this deal, you can probably see on screen now, where I'm now giving him 30%. But, the goalkeeper's included, who's a bit more risky. And I haven't opened his messages, but I've got 10 messages from him. Probably not looking good. But essentially, he thinks I left a player behind. Did I? So essentially, I've just taken about 5-10 minutes just to work out kind of what I'll be sending. And he said, you're essentially missing a player in the last stuff. And I was like, that's far too much. He wanted someone he previously didn't want, and he just undervalues that player. He must have realised how much he's worth. But essentially, if we do this, we're sending £3,400 of value and getting £2,500 worth of value. So why would I send that? Well, firstly, Nadal comes with this big risk. He's averaging 860. Realistically, if he doesn't get that place back, it halves. I don't think he's getting it back. I think he's closer to half. So let's say you take £260 off that, £600. I don't even think I could sell him for that, but it's probably a fair price. On top of that, Kyogo, he's overvalued on here. Someone, I think, paid over the top by mistake. So 120 to £200, no, 110, £120 there. So if you take 120 off, you take 260, you're essentially taking off like £400. So it's then 3,000 compared to 2,500, which is 20%. And he's taken some more risk because if Nadal doesn't keep in and he's got to sell all these players. I'm getting rid of Courtois and Benzema. Benzema's injured, might slip down. Courtois was actually one of these cards I made an offer for. I forgot I had an offer in him. 5-6 days later, the guy accepted. It was pretty scummy, but it was an all right price still, thankfully. It was high, but all right. And I just don't need him. I got Allison instead. So it's like, I want him, like it'd be cool, but he's someone that we could get rid of without caring too much. So in this situation, we've got 5 replies. Let's see what he says. How much is Rafa? So we're very close to agreeing. He wanted a Benfica player. I understand this is like not a good deal, but it solves a lot of problems for me. And that's, I think, the point people miss when they're like, these guys are, thieves, they just take so much money. I self-admit this is an awful deal for me, but it gets rid of all my problems. It means I have a goalkeeper, it means I have a long-term solution as well. And in a second, I'll tell you the secret extra bit why I like Simon. This is such a nervous time. So I've just sent this offer. Let me know what you guys think. But Rafa, Neres, Daley Blind, Kyogo Furuhashi, Jorge de Frutas, Karim Benzema, Nadal, Thibaut Courtois for Unai Simon. It's risky, I know. So now I'm incredibly nervous because I've sent the offer. Obviously, he's got a good deal on this offer because he's getting so many good players. I mean, Blind's going to be good, Kyogo. Like, there's so many good options, but because I'm playing a division higher than where I should be in terms of my value or how much value I've put towards it, because obviously I've dipped back into the limited market very hard, it means essentially I have to be a bit more risky, and this is what has resulted because I only had one goalkeeper. So what he's done is essentially taken 20% for all of these players. Yeah. it essentially has just solved me saving all of them. I'll have to do a spreadsheet to show you why it works, and maybe it doesn't work. This is why I'm quite nervous, you know. Maybe I've been absolutely robbed in the heat at the moment, but we'll see. Hopefully Unai Simon can rise with value, and alternatively, the thing I've been waiting to say is that why I love Simon is because his backup is like an absolute monster, 21, 22-year-old. So if he gets a move, he can be a starting under 23 goalkeeper. So essentially I can hedge my risk again, have the starter under 23. Christmas, one of them leaves, great. Next year, one of them leaves, great. More upside from people leaving, which I think is fantastic. So hopefully this guy accepts it. We have agreed it in principle. So Kyogo, you might be asking why I'm selling him. It's obviously because the rotation is such a killer at Celtic, and I'm thinking I only wanted him for this period over Christmas where not many teams have games and Celtic are one of the first teams back, but the rotation is going to be even stronger in that period, and on top of that, I'm not going to have the players do it. Don't have a goalkeeper, don't have a midfielder unless McGregor's back pretty quickly, so it's a shame, but he's got to go. Okay, so he's been honest enough and he's accepted it after we made the deal, which is fair enough. So we now own Unai Simon, the most expensive player in the gallery. So let's see whether we made a bad situation worse or a bad situation slightly less worse. I've done this little calculation where essentially this is the value of Sorare data averages, and then this is the kind of the average if I was to, what I actually think I can get for them, right? So Rafa, his average was 91. We'll just keep that at 91. I'd probably need to undercut the floor if I wanted to sell him, but he's a new season card and some people pay a premium, so exactly where he is essentially. Daily Blind, he's got on the floor at 850, a little premium of maybe £30 just in case someone came in and had one and just really wanted to take out a Daily Blind. But yeah, again, he could just continue to fall if he doesn't keep that spot. And like, he could be bought for the weekend or the midweek because there's not many people playing. He's got good fixtures, but I don't have the ability to take advantage of that, so it's null and void. Neres, 155 average. He's on the floor of 141. I've been trying to sell him for ages. He's not playing today. 135 would be good. Courtois, 466 is his average, whatever. Nadal, he's probably close to halved in value. He's probably 550, if anyone would even pay that. Benzema, 255, might even slip down after, he's not playing on the weekend. Probably won't, but whatever. Kyogo, he's on sale at 390. Best I'm going to get is 370 probably if I wanted to sell him. De Frutos, £5 under the floor. He's playing all right, but he was benched today. So you end up giving a thing. If I was able to sell them at a good price, right, not panic selling, I'd get 2982. I'm getting value of 2535. Right, so let's just conclude this up because it's probably getting a bit too long. He essentially is getting, on average, players that are worth 3,530 if you look backwards. You can't use backwards looking, numbers, because if they've been injured, they're obviously worth less. Like Nadal, he's just lost his position, he's worth less. No one knows what he's worth because he hasn't sold. I've put a guesstimation on what I think players could sell for if there was a buyer right there today at a fairish price, right? A realistic, good, fair price. So that's kind of what I know I'm trading away in value. What value I'm getting? Last sold. It's kind of the best average we have. It's probably as realistic as you can. I could probably sell it for that because the floor's slightly higher. So he's taken a 17% cut, which is massive. That's after the deduction of the player being injured and everything else. But realistically, the amount of teams it would kill to try and sell 7 players, the amount of, undercutting I'd have to do, I'd probably knock this down like 17%. And on top of that, I've got an asset which might actually appreciate in value as we get closer to the World Cup. And I'm happy to sell him. I'm happy to make a profit on him because I haven't got long-term plans for him. That is where we're at. That is where trading comes in. And with these trade deals, you never really know until it's finished, until we've had a couple of months. And then you look back and say, wow, that was incredible. Or, wow, you've panicked. That was so stupid. I've done this enough now where I don't think this is a panic sell, but I am aware of my situations enough to know lots of you at home are just thinking you've just panic sold everything. You are an idiot. You've just traded away 39% premium. If you take what he's looking at right now, he's probably, licking his lips and going 139% he got on that trade. He knows obviously there's risks involved, but he's got a bigger gallery where he can take risks. And if Nadal gets back in the team, he's back in the team. I think that's going to be it for this episode. There wasn't as much learning in it per se. Actually, maybe there was. There's probably more learning, you know, but, you know, it's my journey, and you'll see whether this trade works out or it doesn't. If Unai Simon picks up an injury in training this week, I'm going to look like a right idiot, aren't I? But that's part of the fun of it. If you like the content, please give it a like. If you want to subscribe, you know where the button is. And I guess all that's left to say is all the best to you. Cheers.